On this episode of That Was a Show, Hudson Street was a show. Tony Danza plays yet another character named Tony in this story about a divorced police detective in Hoboken, New Jersey. Finally ready to give love another chance, Tony gets set up on a date with newspaper writer Melanie, played by Lori Loughlin. The catch? He's a tough-on-crime conservative, and she pretty much just believes in basic civil liberties and due process. In another twist, she lands the city police beat for the New York Times, so now they have to work together. Uh-oh. Join Brynn, Aaron, and Barry as they gather evidence for their investigation into why this star-studded sitcom got bumped off after only one season. We grew up during peak sitcom, Seinfeld, Friends, The Fresh Prince. But those shows were diamonds in the rough. This podcast is not about those diamonds. It's about the rough. Some sitcoms were briefly popular in their time. Some were canceled almost immediately. You probably won't recognize most of these, and you'll ask, that was a show?
That was a show?
The podcast about failed or forgotten sitcoms from the 80s and 90s, starring
Brynn Byrne,
Aaron Yeger,
And Andrew Helmer as Barry.
a Radio Gizmo production.
So yeah, Barry, you're back from your vacation, your travels.
That I am. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be among the fellow Twizzers. Twizzers? Are we the Twizzers?
Twizzers?
I think we're the Twizzers. And then the audience, I think, are the Twizzies.
Okay, although our awards thing was the Twizzies.
The Twizzy Awards.
Son of a bitch. Twizonians?
Yeah.
Ooh, I like that. So,
yeah.
Where did you go? Was this a journey from Milan to Minsk?
Might as well have been.
Well, we know where he went, Aaron.
I'm asking for the benefit of the audience.
I mean, if the audience cares, I went to Rome, Florence, Venice, and then I visited some friends just outside of Belfast in Northern Ireland. So that's where I was for a little while.
Cool.
Hence no podcast for a little while. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, listeners. We'll take this opportunity to apologize for the zero warning that we were going on a break, but we went on a bit of a longer break than we intended. Aaron and I also had an adventure that is still ongoing, which was moving to a new place.
Which I'll actually say is probably the bigger reason why the break was so long.
Yeah.
Not Barry's trip,
not Barry's
but,
trip as much.
Yeah,
that's true. We planned for my trip. We didn't necessarily plan for the move. Yeah,
we're coming at you live, not live, but recorded. We're coming at you
we're
recorded.
Not live at all.
No, live to tape, but then also heavily edited.
Yes,
we're coming at you recorded and heavily edited from our new studio.
Yeah. It's just 5 minutes away from our previous home, but so Barry will have you over here soon and we'll record in person because that stuff is I guess now.
For the audience out there, I mean, it's probably often forgotten is that, we have not really recorded many of these in person despite living in the same city. We started recording in person. I think we recorded the first 3 or 4 episodes together, and then the pandemic happened, and then it's been a couple of years now, and I think we've maybe only managed to record maybe 3 or 4 others in person, and this is episode 46, so
yep.
I mean, I've gotten used to this. So I would imagine the audience doesn't really know the damn difference when we do.
Our chemistry is just so good. Unlike the 2 leads of the show we'll be talking about today, but we'll get to that.
At one point, we did have to upgrade our internet connection to ensure that our video chats were actually in sync.
Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
And this Zoom meeting might die out because We'll see, but
yeah,
anyway.
It might be 2 or 3 Zoom meetings, but anyway.
Anyway, we're here.
Yeah.
We're doing
We're
it.
here.
We're podcasting.
We're doing it.
And yes, we are still podcasting. So thank you to everyone who has waited patiently for this release. And we're really excited to be back with you and talking more smack about old TV.
I don't know how excited we are about this show in particular.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to be talking to the two of you about a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I mean, spoiler alert for everybody out there. I also really wish it wasn't this show.
Oh, I love that we're on the same page.
that should set the mood for what's to come.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny, like, often one of the 3 of us will be a dissenter from the overall vibe of the reaction
Yeah.
to a show. Minute 1 of watching the first episode of this show, and I was like, no, this is going to be a unifier here.
I had a brief moment at the beginning where I was just like, okay, I'm like, all right, I could kind of see Brynn and Aaron really not being into this. And then like maybe 30 seconds pass and I was like, oh, and me neither. Okay.
Yeah. You know what? It's an example of a show that in its format and in the like tone is so familiar. If you grew up in the 90s watching sitcoms at that time, you immediately recognize the cadence of this show. There's something about like the interplay between the rhythm of the dialogue and the laugh track and the way that it's shot. It's extremely familiar 1995 sitcom. There's nothing weird about the style of how it's executed. But as you will soon discover from our conversation, it's a pretty shallow well that they're pumping from.
Yeah.
18 minutes in, why don't we tell the audience what we're talking about?
We haven't even said yet.
Yeah. Okay, so
do your thing, Aaron. Go for it.
All right, here's my thing. Hudson Street is the 1995 classic starring Tony Danza as a tough-talking police detective in Hoboken, New Jersey, and Lori Loughlin as a cub crime reporter for the New York Times, who is also his foil/love interest. Wait, did I say classic? No. This show was canceled after 1 season. Naturally, Tony Danza's character also happens to be named Tony. In this case, Tony Canetti. Quick aside, I did some research, and in fact, Tony Danza has played 7 different Tonys on television. So there you go with that. Also, he is once again playing a single dad, and once again, that is leveraged to show that he is capable of being somewhat nurturant, and that this otherwise macho guy, maybe, just maybe, has a softer side. At least in his personal life. He's definitely a tough-on-crime reactionary, and Lori Loughlin's Melanie Clifford is a liberal journalist. He rants about all criminals being rats who are undeserving of any sympathy regardless of the circumstances, and she rants about things like civil liberties and human rights. So basically, they are a socio-political odd couple in a will they or won't they package. We watched 2 episodes, the pilot and episode 8.
I have to flag immediately that her last name is actually pronounced Loughlin.
Loughlin.
Yeah.
So I'm going to retake that.
I don't think you have to.
I think we're fine. I think we're fine.
So we'll just keep the U in. Loughlin, eh? I've been pronouncing it Crandall. Now I feel like an idiot.
Let's follow our usual rules of pronounce it however it comes out while you're talking.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. I'll tell you what happens in the pilot. So it's Loughlin?
Yeah, it's Loughlin. Yeah.
All right. In the pilot, we meet Tony Canetti trading jabs with his cop buddies and learn that this will be part workplace comedy. And then in a rare twist on the trope, meet his ex-wife Lucy when she drops off their son Frankie. Shared custody. Whoa! And also she becomes a series regular. Whoa! Okay, they got divorced a year ago and everyone is encouraging Tony to start dating again. One of the other cops sets him up on a blind date with a newspaper.
Yep. Newspaper.
Newspaper.
I think personally that's a better name for the job than reporter, journalist, or even newsy. Just a papy.
Newspaper. I guess I can't cut that out. That's too funny.
We're a little rusty, folks.
All right. Try this again. One of the other cops sets him up on a blind date with a newspaper obituary writer. This turns out to be Melanie, who at this point is aspiring to get the job of crime reporter. They get into a pretty intense argument almost immediately due to their radically differing worldviews, and the date doesn't end well. The big twist at the end of the episode is that she got the promotion to the metro desk on the police beat, so she'll be working right down the hall and hopes he'll be a reliable and friendly connection in the police department. Thus sets up the central premise of the series. Will they be able to work together effectively or constantly butt heads? Will they fall in love? What could possibly go wrong?
I know one thing that could go wrong.
What's that?
What's his last name? Canetti?
Canetti. I mean, there's many things that could go wrong, but what's one of them?
Well, I would say the primary obstacle into their will they, won't they relationship is that Tony Canetti is a complete piece of shit.
Yeah.
I hate him so much.
Yeah, he's the worst.
Don't get me wrong. Like, I've gone on this before, is that, you know, Tony Danza is a great performer. It is always, you know, he's very capable. He's always enjoyable to watch. You know, he's not putting in a bad performance. It's a shitty character. And worse, it's not like a poorly written shitty character. This guy is so believably shitty that, like, you're just like, oh, I hate you so much.
Yeah.
It is the exact it's the exact opposite of, say, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, where you watch it and, you know, you're like, okay, well, these cops are okay. They're trying to do the right thing and blah, blah, blah. They have their heads in the right place. They really are trying to help people. He's a shithead. He hates everything to do with criminals. He hates his job. Like, when in a sitcom, in a pilot of a sitcom, somebody actually brings up that there are, like, socioeconomic reasons for crime. He's like, fuck that. I don't like him anyways.
I also found, like, that there's the scene where they go to the Rastafarian restaurant.
Ooh.
Yeah.
And he's so, like, racist there. He's just, everything in his tone is, like, very...
Yeah.
He's like, like, this guy, the server comes up to them and he's like, there's some wisecrack about his hair.
Yeah, like...
It's like, remind me to never wear my hair like that. And
have
it's
you
like,
made any decisions? Yeah, never to wear my hair like that.
And I'm just
Although
like...
the other guy is just great throughout the whole scene.
That actor is fantastic.
He was great, but like it also has that sitcom logic problem of the fact that he chose to go there.
Yes.
They were very clear in the dialogue.
He's like, oh, this funky Rasta place. And it's like the way he talks about it is so like it's
derisive.
Like, yes.
Yeah.
It's like you're such an asshole.
It's a Rastafarian pool hall. And so to back it up a little bit,
that's like also a sit-down restaurant with waiters that are dressed like restaurants in a steak or waiters in a steakhouse.
Yeah. So they're on their blind date. He meets her after a pretty bad joke about making fun of how some other random woman on the street is like.
That was also terrible.
Fortunately, not her because she's not attractive or whatever.
She's slightly older than he is.
Yeah. So then he made reservations at some Italian restaurant, but she gives some reason why she doesn't like reservations and she'd rather do something spontaneous. So they go on a little walk. She's already like very flirty and romantic with him. They've just met. And he's the one who suggests that they pop into this Rastafarian pool hall, which is apparently like a place he knows well in the neighborhood. And then he's just so nasty about the place. And you're right, like it seems like a very randomly constructed sitcom set of like half fancy restaurant, half pool hall. The Rastafarian thing seems to be just wedged in there so that it can be the butt of jokes.
Which is obviously quite problematic.
Quite brutal. And then their date immediately descends into like vicious argument over their differing worldviews. And like, I get how like when I first read the premise of this show, like the 1 or 2 sentence synopsis, I was like, okay. I can see how that's like the premise of a 90s sitcom. I can see how you could pull some comedy out of that. The idea of this like police detective and this crime reporter. Okay, interesting. But like the difference between their worldviews is so blunt. Like it's like watching someone hammering a nail with a brick, and there's no like nuance, there's no subtlety. They don't let these differences of opinion unfold organically over time. It's all just like expository dialogue. I'm the tough guy.
Yeah.
Well, I'm the softy. And
But also, I mean, like, she's so badly written. Like, she's just so like chaotic and like not and irrational. So it's like trying to portray a liberal person as just completely irrational and like mercurial. Like she keeps having these like ranty meltdowns in several, you know, scenarios, and it's like someone like her would not find him attractive. Like, this is what it bothers me. I feel like this was a hot thing to do in the 90s and like 80s maybe. Is like, oh, let's pair up an unlikely duo, romantic duo, a liberal woman and a conservative man, and it's like, that's just not gonna happen.
No, because when it's done,
real life.
When it's done well, there's some elements of like common ground between them, or there'd be some way where you'd see that there is chemistry, but there's no obvious chemistry to be found, and they're incredibly like they lay it on so thick, and they're so blunt about the differences between them that it just doesn't make sense that you would like want to see this pairing go on for episodes.
In fact, you know, we pick up a few episodes later and they're still very much not getting along. And like, they're as foils, you get it. You're like, yeah, these people fucking hate each other and like they constantly have to bounce off each other. I can't imagine an audience ever being invested in seeing them get together, because it basically means she has to give up every ounce of her principles to just be with Tony Danza because he's the lead. Yeah. Like, she's channeling like all of her little meltdowns and stuff like that. Like, they're really, really nailing, like trying to go for like the Rosalind Russell and His Girl Friday. Like, she's a fast talking reporter, but it's modern day. Like, it just doesn't work. Right. No. Like, you know, Lori Loughlin always has a capable energy to her. Like, she's always like, again, not necessarily doing a bad job, just not really enamoring you to her much. The writers, it's really interesting because they're having these somewhat interesting, you know, clashes in worldviews, but like you said, there's no nuance to it, especially on the port of the writers don't think he's right. Like, the writers are very clearly liberals. They're very clearly, it's just weird because he's the hero of the show, and the show very clearly goes out of its way to be like, he's such an idiot. He's such a like hothead. There's no way you're supposed to like him. And like, I don't get it.
It's very confusing.
But on the one hand, it's like intellectually, you can see how the writers are putting their opinions about society into her character.
Yes.
But emotionally, in terms of like the storytelling arc, not only is he positioned as the hero of the series, and we know this, like, it's not an even-handed show between the two of them. Like, he's the protagonist, he's the single father, we open on him, we have a lot about his relationship with his son and his ex and all of that. So it's clearly like the show is his show. He's also, Tony Danza's an executive producer on the series. Like, this is his show.
Yeah.
And it feels like they're trying to make him the more likable character, even if intellectually they agree with her in principle. And so there's a weird
like
thing going on there.
Her more of a like buffoon. Like they're making her, which is annoying. Like
they make her opinions silly.
Yeah.
Even though it does seem like the way those opinions are written, you assume that they are coming from the writers. And I'll get into this more in episode 8 because I think it's easier to articulate this particular problem with the show through that plot.
Yeah. It's interesting just to kind of see, like, I don't know what they're going for with him. Like, is he an Archie Bunker?
Oh my God, I was literally going to say that.
Is he an Archie Bunker character where, like, he's deliberately obtuse and we're supposed to see he's wrong, but he's still got a heart of gold? Because I don't see that.
Yeah.
I see everybody around him, like his ex-wife comes into the picture and like he's like constantly like shitting on her, and like they actually like have kind of a sweet co-parenting relationship where they get along, and you're like, dude, like stop ragging on her. Like she's really nice to you. She still cares about you. You guys have a functioning co-parenting relationship, and he's still like, yeah, look at this one over here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I kind of like how they get along, but he is ragging on her.
Yeah.
And she respects him enough to like tell him that she met a guy that she's serious about and all this stuff.
And that she thinks he should start dating again.
Like,
and
she's like so supportive of him. And he's just like, yeah, this is my ex-wife, blah, blah, blah. Like,
hey, look at this one over here.
Yeah.
He's such a macho asshole that like, and I'm sorry I'm swearing so much on this podcast, guys. It's just he is an asshole. Like
he's completely unlikable.
He's such a like contrarian in that like, and they show it many times where like, he'll be like, hey, take my wife, please. And then, when they're talking, you're like, well, you guys are fine. So what are you talking about? Or like when his date goes poorly and he starts bragging about it and being like, yeah, it was a great date. I got to stop making that really stereotypical accent. That's not helping anybody's case here. But he's just like, he's bragging about like, oh yeah, like I beat her at pool and stuff like that. And you're like, who cares, man? Like nobody. Oh, I hate you.
Yeah. I can't believe you stole the Archie Bunker theory from my mouth. Like I was literally waiting to jump in and say that, because that's what I was like. I was thinking, is this a failed Archie Bunker attempt? Like, did they fail? Like they were trying to be like, he's a blowhard. He's like super, like, were they trying to do that exact thing, but it just was like not.
Yeah.
So
I don't know.
This is interesting to me. Like that connection didn't occur to me, but it's interesting that both of you brought this up, and reflecting on this, I'm thinking like, because this might be the first time that we've encountered this in our show where it really does feel like an attempt at an Archie Bunker-esque character dynamic.
Yeah, because it's a main character who's conservative, who bumps head with another main character who's liberal, and like the fireworks that ensue.
And the show is emotionally sympathetic to him, even though it is intellectually not necessarily on his side in terms of the content of what he's saying, but it's trying to get you to be on his side anyway. And it doesn't work. I agree with both of you. But that's just, in terms of our vernacular on the show, we should call this the Archie Bunker theory.
Yeah.
Because this will probably come up again at some point.
Yeah.
I would assume so.
This show seems to have a lot of jokes derived from men uncomfortably learning to deal with women as equals. And I feel like that was
in the mid-90s.
Yeah, in the mid-90s. And I feel like in 80s sitcoms, that was like pretty much a given. But by 95, 96, it's starting to feel like, are they really tapping that again?
Yeah.
Like,
guys,
what is...
Guys, watch a modern sitcom. Men are still learning to deal with women as equal human beings.
I guess. But like, this show, like, just, bouncing away from the main principal like arc of the series to some of the other business that happens, like there's all of the sort of chit chat between the cops at the station, and like a lot of it is like those cliche jokes about like relationships between men and women, and like women cops, and like all these things that are just like, the jokes are like so expected and so hacky and
Yeah, I don't know if either of you guys are Sopranos fans, but like the chief or whatever his character name is played by Jerry Adler, who plays Hesh in The Sopranos, and he's such a great performer, and it was so disappointing to just be like, oh, I hate everything you're saying here.
I love Jerry Adler and like everything, and he
me too.
I was just like, oh, like
I actually had a similar note.
I guess he's just been this age forever.
Yes, true. For like 20 years, he's been the same age.
I feel like I want to go on a search for like early roles of Jerry Adler when he was young to see if that exists. But I also had a note about Jerry Adler saying, Jerry Adler I like, but he's playing such a cliche character. And it's true. It's like, it was very disappointing to see that even he was not like bringing some sunshine to this.
He's still with us.
Yeah. Yeah, I did look that up too to make sure.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's nice.
Should I intro episode 8 now?
Yeah, go for it.
What the hell?
Yes.
This one is titled Contempt. Melanie writes an article about a recent crime, and one of her sources might be able to help Tony pin the crime on the guy who he believes is guilty. She refuses to give up her source, and he pulls a favor to get her subpoenaed to testify before a judge. She still refuses to give up her source and gets held in contempt and thrown in jail. This theme of press freedom and source confidentiality is a complex, interesting, and still very relevant one. Will they treat this with the context and sophistication it deserves?
No.
Nah. In fact, Melanie's rich, pompous parents show up. They're from Connecticut and well-connected. They want to intervene because Melanie's commitment to her principles is embarrassing to them. But Tony actually defends her in front of them and then tries to seduce the source out of her. The plot is resolved by a deus ex machina when her source gives up their name and sells their story for a few $100.
It's like, okay, the whole seduction thing, too. I do not understand why.
I saw it coming a mile away, too. You're just like, I know where this is going.
I don't understand why that was, like, appealing to her. Like, that whole thing was just so goofy and, like, not even... Like, she's we're to believe that she's...
an intelligent woman.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It was really stupid. I did find it very funny that in this episode, the thing she goes to jail for is actually an admirable thing.
I would also, and she also refuses to use her white privilege to get out of jail.
Yeah. Yeah.
See, this one really, this is the one that really got me because, okay, so right off the bat, like comes in, like, he's wants to get this crook behind bars. He's in court on Friday. You're not still making the case, buddy. Like, it's already going to court.
Yeah.
And so she's got an article where there's an unnamed source saying something about him and stuff like that. Okay, cool. That can still be used. And then he's like, you got to give up your source. And she's like, no, I can't. That's end of story. Like,
yeah.
That's the law. She doesn't have to. And then the fucking show knows that. And then they have him consistently just pull cop bullshit privilege. And then the judge steamrolls over her. Like, and everybody just keeps throwing the obvious thing away, which is like, this is open and shut. Like, that's the law.
Well,
like,
so
she does not have to give up her source.
So I actually, small shout out to a podcast I quite enjoy, a Canadian podcast called Canada Land, which does media criticism. And this exact topic has come up numerous times on that show. And I'm definitely not expert enough to address this, but from my understanding, these sorts of cases where a journalist gets subpoenaed or is put in a position where there is like pressure from the system to give up information is a thing that happens. And then that ends up getting resolved through like complicated lawsuits and things that are like way above the pay grade of a sitcom. Like it's not the kind of thing the way they portray it here, where she goes in and meets with a judge and he just makes snide remarks and she's got her one lawyer standing there and then everything kind of gets like talked out between a few people. Like that's not, she is, we are to believe, a crime reporter for the New York Times. Yes. So if some like local judge over a relatively low profile crime was trying to lean on her like this, they would eviscerate those people. Like the New York Times probably has 100 lawyers on retainer. So like none of this makes any sense.
And also like, again, the effing like low rent detective is not involved.
Exactly.
He's not making the case for something that's already in court on Friday.
Yeah.
And like it's not even supposed to be a low rent crime. Like this is supposed to be like a crime boss because there's a million of those on TV. And like I just and it really pisses me off that like he never learns anything from this.
No.
Like he is consistently like he just gets away with all this like basically like police bullshit.
He learns
and
nothing.
He's,
and the show
and she sort of like I mean, I guess at the end he acknowledges that you know, like she stuck to her principles and stuff like that. And like, yeah, cool. We already knew that she did. Like she did the right thing. And then the show sort of laughs at her for it.
He admires that she stuck to her principles, but this show still positions it as if it's her principles as a junior reporter versus him, some police detective, and not like a bunch of lawyers from a newspaper and like a district attorney in their department battling it out in a way that would have like very little hinging on the relationship between these two people. Like this is truly not a theme that you can explore through the relationship between these two people. You know, at the beginning of Law and Order, where they say in the criminal justice system, there's two equally important groups or whatever. There's the police who catch the criminals or whatever, and there's the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. This falls squarely in the second half of the Law and Order episode with the district attorneys. The cops are not present in the room for these conversations. And they follow it up where when she's found in contempt and she gets thrown in jail, he's the one who leads her to the cell. How does that make sense?
I don't know. I mean, maybe we're to believe that he has all these connections where he can make it so that...
I think it's, you know, and it's, again, I bring up Brooklyn Nine-Nine again, just because A, it's a show that I love. And B, like, it's one of those things where, like, you occasionally would come across stories like this on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but because of the very difference in writing, you know, again, this is 20 years ago, so obviously you can't expect modern writers to be on it, but, like, just seeing, like, a character like Jake Peralta, who occasionally will show, you know, moments of, like, cop machoism and stuff like that, but basically he's such a character that learns so much over the course of that, and you know, by the end of that show is such a wonderful human being that like it's just so dispiriting to watch. Be like, oh right, yeah. I hate all of you.
Again, not to keep harping on this, but she gets thrown in a holding cell at a police station. That's not what happens. That's like the cell that they call in a normal TV show like the drunk tank. That's not where people who are found in contempt of court go. None of this makes any sense.
Where do those people go? I don't even know.
Like at actual jail, I think.
I also, I mean, how can she be found in contempt of court? She never went to court.
No, it was like a preliminary meeting with a judge. I don't even know if that makes sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And then there's this lawyer character who comes in, and like, it's so funny because the show keeps being like, this guy's, you know, he's so laughable. What a joke. And you're like, this guy's great. He's a good lawyer. He defends her. He respects her. Brings her a muffin. Like, this guy's great. And the show's just like, this guy is such a joke. And you're just like, what?
Why? Because he's doing his job and he seems qualified?
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, boy. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is, like, it's hard to tell whose side this show is on, but it does seem to be stacked against her. And the whole sequence with her parents and exploring her, like, obviously very privileged upbringing, the way they present it feels like they are putting down her principles around journalism as if it's just some sort of, like, oh, she's just like the naive Ivy League, ivory tower sort of person that has no like real life street smarts. Yeah. And he's like the guy who we're supposed to be more sympathetic with because he comes from a more relatable place or something. Like it felt like they were using that to like make us more against her profession or something. I don't know. It's hard to hard to put my finger on it, but something just didn't sit well.
I don't know if it's worth trying to figure out what they were intending. Because...
I agree.
Probably not worth it.
These two cartoon characters come in and you're like, I guess these are her parents.
Yeah, let's just like focus on the impact, which was a very boring and unlikable show.
Now, actor Tom Gallup was in it. He's in the Seinfeld episode, The Andrea Doria. Is he the bad breaker-upper who gets the fork in the forehead?
I mean, who is he playing in this?
Rogalski. Officer Rogalski, which is such the last name that a cop on a show like this has to have.
So Rogalski, he's the guy who sets him up on the blind date.
Yeah.
And he's the guy always quoting the poetry, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't place him.
Let me look it up. I should be...
Is the Andrea Doria, that's the episode of Seinfeld he's in, is that the episode where...
With the bad breaker-upper?
With the bad breaker-upper. That's all we need to know.
I don't know.
While you're looking that up, I also want to comment on the opening theme and title sequence of this show. So first of all, we should take a step back and say that this is a Jonathan Wolff scored series.
Yes.
Cool.
Yes, good score.
Great score.
Great score.
I would say, at least in style, if you're out there, keeping track, I would say it's more reminiscent of his Will and Grace work.
Oh yeah, similar to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good score. Interesting that Tony Danza is singing the theme song, and the pairing of that with like the really arty black and white photography of the sort of New York, New Jersey area and that typeface that they use. It doesn't feel like the visuals. I'm not so much talking about the music, but the visuals don't quite feel thematically connected to the show. Like I don't really understand what the connection is between.
I found it really weird that they so not only in the show description, but also in the opening credits, they focus on birthplace of Frank Sinatra. And do they think that people don't know what New Jersey is?
That must be what it is. 'Cause it feels like the opening credits have a visual aesthetic that are like a nod to a Frank Sinatra era thing of that kind of classy, old-timey New York sort of thing. And,
when men were men.
And then, I guess that's how it connects with the themes of the show. The macho throwbacks in all of the roles.
I would like to watch a Tony Danza show where I like Tony Danza. That would be nice.
Yeah.
Because, again...
I've always found him delightful. Like, when
right?
he's not playing, when it's not his show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I see him pop up in things, I'm always happy to see him.
Yeah, I find him very likable. I went into this expecting to like him. He's very charming.
Because, again, he's always a very capable performer, which makes this role very... it's more dangerous because you're like, if you make a character like this charming and likable, you're gonna miss that he's an asshole if you're really not paying attention.
Yeah. And I guess if you go back to Who's the Boss, which, if I remember correctly, started in the late 80s? Something like that.
I would say Who's the Boss? I don't know, 85 maybe?
Mid to late 80s. And, one of the central themes in that show, which is highlighted in the title itself, as I was thinking about it, writing these notes, is, who's the boss? Well, clearly Angela is his boss. He's been hired to be a live-in maid/nanny. But because he's the man, maybe he's the boss? That's clearly built into the premise of that show. But that show explores that in kind of a more earnest and thoughtful way over time. And starting in the mid 80s, it's more logical that you'd be doing that to begin with. But by the time this rolls around, it's like, okay, we get it.
We assume. When was the last time anybody watched an episode of Who's the Boss?
Fair enough.
Yeah, it's been forever.
Been a long time. I'm extrapolating from vague memories from childhood, but I'm more speaking to the fact that in the mid 80s, I feel like it's not surprising that would be the central theme of a show. Whereas a decade later, it feels like you're rehashing a concept that does not need to be rehashed.
Agreed.
Yes, he is the bad breaker-upper. Sorry for the delay.
Yes. That's okay.
Sorry, folks.
That's okay. Well, I'm not going to lie. I would say, this moving at a good clip. I'm good. I'm good.
I mean, I did want to bring up, rehash a little point that Aaron made earlier, but it can be a leftovers. I don't know.
This is the point in the episode where I'm usually the one with a whole bunch more notes that I want to throw in.
I mean, it's
I
not a
don't
whole
really
bunch.
have anything left.
I just have one more thing. I just wanted to touch on something you brought up earlier, Aaron, and that was this kind of idea of the formula of sitcoms being comforting.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really a thing. And I wonder if the three of us, when we're revisiting some of these, it's hard to parse whether or it's hard to tell whether some of these shows that we sort of do we actually like them? Or is it that we're just kind of it feels familiar?
We were raised on it.
It feels like there's something comforting about the formula.
It's the McDonald's French fries of television.
I think that's why a lot of people like Law and Order, to bring up, you know, a lot of people, there's a lot of jokes about people I fall asleep to Law and Order at night. And some of that is the true crime fascination. But I think part of it is just the formula. There's something about it that is just so familiar to people of a certain age and of a certain demographic. It's just the thing that's always on and is reliable and very formulaic.
That's interesting. And while you were watching one of these episodes, I was assembling some IKEA furniture as we noted that we were in the process of moving. And I actually had this weird thought that crossed my mind where IKEA also has a bit of that flavor, where it's kind of a comfort place that if you've grown up going to IKEA, especially if you live in a city and you move a lot to different apartments.
This is not an ad for IKEA.
This is not an ad for IKEA, but I was assembling it and, I can remember back in the day having to double check things on the instructions and make sure that I'm doing it right. But now it's just so old hat. It's just so easy because I realized that the way IKEA furniture is assembled is a collection of repeating patterns, tropes, kind of like in sitcoms. And, it gets to be so familiar that it actually makes it easy and comfortable. And you feel like it's a cozy thing to be doing it. And some of their furniture is cool, and then some of it feels kind of crappy, but it's all fitting within that tone. I don't know.
What are you writing your masters here?
All right.
Oh, mercy.
We should call out the poker game trope.
Okay, yeah, the poker game trope.
Yeah, episode 8 opens with the obvious classic poker game where the whole gang from the police station are at someone's home, sitting around a table, each doing their $1 bets. And the fun twist is that Tony's son is playing the game, even though he's a kid. And they're all cops, but apparently, they don't care about gambling laws. And
on the other hand, it's 50 cents. This is not something that would get them busted.
Exactly.
I'm not sure why the show is so oh, that's illegal.
Yeah. So it doesn't really even make sense why it's a big deal. And then it is kind of funny the way that the mom comes in and her thing with the son, the way they end up hustling everyone else because they make it seem like she gave up his hand, but she was actually bluffing. That was kind of cute, but
that was the closest thing to a cute scene in the show. Huh?
The closest thing.
I basically liked all the scenes where the ex-wife comes in. Because I just I liked her. I don't know. There's something about her I found very charming.
Yeah, she was all right.
Yeah.
She was Sean Hunter's mother.
Oh, wow.
And his relationship with his son is also generally well handled. They have a pretty sweet back and forth between the sons. Even as weird as it is, just to see the level of physical affection between a father and son on TV like that was kind of sweet. kind of sweet. You don't always see that.
Yeah,
you know?
I agree with that.
You know, like they kiss each other, and like that's generally something you don't see on TV because men don't.
Yeah, if only the show had balanced things better between his supposed nurturant side and then all of the shtick that happens at the police station and with Melanie. Because unfortunately, all of that stuff, obviously, since we spent 90% of this conversation talking about it, it's because that's 90% of the show.
Yeah.
So, Brynn, how does Hudson Street connect with Friends?
All right. So I assume that it connects in more ways than what I actually wrote down here. But I just didn't, I didn't have the energy to do all the many webs and connections. But I have two for you. So one is a 1 degree connection and one is a 2 degree connection.
All right.
Yeah. So the 1 degree connection, which is kind of a fun connection, is through Marcus Flanagan, who plays the defense lawyer Jay Gallagher in Hudson Street. He guest starred and memorably guest starred on Friends as Phoebe's boyfriend whose balls kept peeking out of his gym shorts. It's the episode in season 3 called where Monica and Richard are just friends. And yeah, so she's dating this guy, Robert.
Right. I remember that.
Who always wears shorts, who always wears gym shorts. And he keeps put
his leg up on the chair on the couch.
And it's always around the guys too, right?
And his testicles are just out there for everybody to see. So that's a 1 degree connection. And the other one is a 2 degree connection through Jerry Adler. So he played Lieutenant Al Teichler. Is that correct? Or is it Tischler? Whatever.
Tischler.
So he plays.
I don't know. I don't remember.
Yeah, I didn't care enough to remember. Anyway, So Lieutenant Al Tischler. So he had a recurring role on Mad About You, and
I'm not familiar with that program.
So sorry, guys. It's another Phoebe Buffay connection. So basically, he was recurring on Mad About You alongside Lisa Kudrow, who played Ursula Buffay. But also played Ursula Buffay's twin sister, Phoebe Buffay, on Friends.
Oh.
And I think there are more than one Mad About You connections, but that was all the energy I had.
That's good. That's good.
That's all we need.
At some point, do we need to do some sort of bonus episode where we just rewatch a few episodes of Mad About You and try to understand why there are so many connections to that show? Like, did that show have 1,000 guest stars or something?
Well, yeah. But
it's
you
in
could
the
do
same
it with
universe too.
Yeah. Yes. It is. Yeah.
It's the
Friends
same
and Mad About
universe
You.
as Friends.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that it's interesting that Mad About You intersects with so many of these other shows
It does.
that we review.
Well,
it was an NBC sitcom.
Yeah.
You could do the same with Mad About You, Friends, Seinfeld, Will and Grace. These shows ran for the better part of a decade on NBC. And, they all shot on the same lots or close enough to the same lots. So, they're going to share they probably had the same casting agents.
I mean, probably. It feels like, a lot of NBC shows, there's just all the actors from one show have guest starred on another. Like, it's just.
But Hudson Street was not
family.
NBC.
Right. But it doesn't.
It wasn't?
No.
I don't know what it was. I was just asking.
I believe it was ABC. I'd have to check again.
This feels very NBC to me.
One of you check.
I don't wanna.
I don't wanna. This is all. It's all staying. I'm looking.
Well, you were supposed to cover that in your intro, Aaron.
Didn't care.
This is the problem. This is the problem with this particular show. We didn't. None of us.
ABC.
Okay,
ABC.
so you were right. Sorry, guys. I mean, it sounds like we're just not prepared, but literally, it's just because we liked this show so little.
I would challenge anyone out there to watch one episode of this and try to care about it, because you can't.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
But the network definitely wanted people to care about it because, according to Wikipedia, it initially received some good reviews and placed in the top 10, partly due to its placement between the ABC hits Roseanne and Home Improvement, but the series was canceled after one season as it couldn't hold on to its lead-in audience. And then it was moved to Saturday, which sealed its fate for cancellation.
Did 22 episodes, 4 of them remained unaired.
So there you have it.
Yeah. Brynn, why don't you tell us about the
spinoff.
The spinoff!
Okay, well, like we're seeing over and over again, like a lot of these people, it doesn't matter how poorly received a show is. A lot of the actors and the cast, like they continue to work. It's like a little blip in their career. No big deal. They all move on and continue to do other stuff.
Did anything ever happen to Lori Loughlin after this?
Oh, I don't know. We'll get to it. So Tony Danza, everybody knows what he's been up to. As we said in our previous episode, he just continued to play various other characters named Tony in other projects, and he kept being a very popular and beloved television performer. So, he wasn't going anywhere. He had this as a flop. And then he also had another series. What was it?
Tony Danza Show.
The Tony Danza Show. That also was not a success. But, it just, he just kept going. He kept at it. And then, so Lori Loughlin, so she followed up Hudson Street with a variety of TV movies and TV guest spots, including Suddenly Susan and Seinfeld. She plays like one of Jerry's girlfriends in Seinfeld. She had recurring roles on Spin City, The Drew Carey Show. She then starred in the short-lived WB series Summerland. I don't know if either of you saw that.
Yes,
it was not a good show either.
No, but it was on.
She also co-starred in the 90210 reboot. Playing
one of them.
Yeah, one of them. And she became big in the world of Hallmark, and did tons of Christmas movies and stuff like that, right? And
mysteries, yeah.
So she reprised her role as Aunt Becky in Fuller House, and she was dropped from that series when she was arrested in the 2019 college admissions scandal. And I'm sure you all know the details of that. If not, feel free to do some Googling, but it's like a very embarrassing situation for her and everyone involved. Yeah. I mean, everyone else in the main cast, Jerry Adler, Jeffrey Anderson Gunter, who plays Winston Silvera, who is the guy at the Rasta Club. He continues to be on the show, so it becomes a bigger role.
Okay.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so I guess that restaurant becomes their hangout or something. But anyway, he and Christine Dunford, who plays the one female cop in the whole series, all of these performers continued to work a ton. Tom Gallup, Shireen Mitchell, who plays his ex-wife, they're all just stellar performers, all popping up in TV over the years. All mostly in sitcoms, but in other 1-hour dramas. Basically Hudson Street might have been a flop, but
they all did just fine.
They all did just fine.
They're
okay.
Again, like most of the shows we watch, there's very seldom a poor performer on them. They're all talented actors and actresses. Say what you want about Lori Loughlin, she's always a capable presence on television, and the reason why she works so much is because she is that. I mean, she is not a hard person to watch on TV, nor is Tony Danza.
Yeah. They're both very talented. There's no reason this shouldn't have worked.
Everyone in this show is delivering their performances at a high energy. They're doing everything they can to make their respective characters engaging. And, Yeah,
I would say this one really, really fails on a writing level. I mean, more than anything, tone and writing, really.
Often I'll rag on editing things or visual things, like camera choices. No problems with any of that stuff. Nothing bumped for me in terms of the style of the way this was executed. It felt very proficiently put on the screen.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
You know, maybe we should take a moment to talk about our show. That was a show. That was a show. And how much we love to hear from you out there, the listeners.
I mean, if you liked this episode, don't forget to leave us a review on Apple Podcast or, well, anywhere you can leave us a review. If you had any ideas for future shows to cover or you just want to say hi, you can reach out to us on social media or, hey, you can leave us a voice message. Isn't that right, Aaron?
That's right, Barry. It's easy. Just go to anchor.fm/thatwasashow and click message. Who knows? We may even play your voice message on a future episode of a show.
Maybe we should listen to a couple of those messages now.
Great idea. I haven't checked it in a couple days, actually.
Message 1.
Aaron, Anthony Producer here. I'm still on the road for my book signing. I was just thinking about you guys in the show. I hope you're all doing well.
Oh, well, that was nice.
Message 2.
Aaron, Mr. Producer here. I got to thinking. I left town so quickly, I forgot to check my TiVo. Would you mind going over there, making sure it's still set to record new episodes of Magnum P.I.? Thanks, kid.
I don't have the slightest clue where he lives.
There's no way that TiVo still exists.
Message 3.
Aaron, Tony P. Jody just told me that CBS canceled Magnum. Never mind.
Actually, I was actually just reading that.
Message 4.
Kid, great news. NBC swooped in and they rescued Magnum P.I. Gonna need you to check that TiVo after all.
Does he think there's already episodes ready to go?
Message 5.
Hey, kid. AT here. Jody just told me it's not even the same damn Magnum P.I. Who the hell is Jay Hernandez? This kid doesn't even have a mustache.
End of messages.
All right, well, I guess,
It would be really nice if other people left us some messages. That's all I can say.
Yeah, so everyone listening out there, we'd love to hear from you about the show. So please leave us some voice messages so that we're not stuck playing messages from Mr. Producer.
What a guy. I hope his book tour is going well.
Yeah, me too.
I wonder what city he's in right now.
Who knows?
Speaking of book tours, our friend of the pod, Neil Fisher, I believe is on a book tour himself.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, it's called Being Patrick Swayze, Essential Teachings from the Master of the Mullet. You can find it, where you buy books.
Maybe they'll bump into each other on the road.
All right. Well, I guess that's another show.
Yeah, that was a show indeed.
Indeed it was. Until next time. That Was a Show is created and hosted by Brynn Byrne, Andrew Barry Helmer, and myself, Aaron Yeger. It's a production of Radio Gizmo in Toronto, Canada. Subscribe, rate, review, and share. Follow us on Instagram and tell your friends about it. That Was a Show?
Radio Gizmo.